So, disclaimer again, this is an idea that I got when I was preparing to teach a bunch of people, some might actually be here, about key, and then I realized that there were issues. So, first off, key is great and powerful and all that. So let's say we have some matrix of names, then it could give you the unique names that appear there, and it could do that even before we extended the unique function to do so. So this was a way to do that. But the real power of it is that it can tell you also some information about where these pieces of data appear, these names in this case. So this will give us, as left argument to the left operand, the unique elements or major cells, and as right argument, it gives us the indices that they appear at when you use it monetically, like this, the derived function monetically. And then often you don't want the indices themselves, you want to compute something based on those indices. For example, how many are there of each? So you can use it to classify, or you classify some data, and then you count how many are there in each class. All right. What you'll often find then is that, well, you got the right data, but it's not quite in the right order. For example, if you're dealing with names, it would be very nice if they were listed alphabetically. And key will just give them to you in the order that they appear in the data, which is going to be a bit frustrating. Luckily, we know how to sort in APL, so not that much of a problem. And then you notice that if somebody doesn't appear in the list, but is one of the people that could appear, maybe this week it doesn't appear, then it doesn't get mentioned at all. Because if there aren't any instances, then, well, the key won't know about it. How would it know that there exists another name somewhere? So we can, of course, fix this by making sure that there is at least one of each of the names. So we create a list of all the names that could possibly appear, and then we append them to our names, and then we just have to make sure to remove the last instance of it. But this doesn't take care of the ordering, and it seems a bit doubly. First, we define the list of names in the proper order, and then we have to order it anyway when we already know what the order is. We can fix this by moving this list of all the possible names to the front instead, and then we have to do a little bit of arithmetic and juggling to make our results be right, because now the index is all offset by the length of the list of possible names. So that's a bit of a bother. And sometimes you don't want the full list. You just want some information, some query you're making. I want to know all the appearances or how many there are of these types of data. And that doesn't really work, because even though you give it a list and you append it to the front, it will still hit all the other values, and it will just put them at the end in no particular order. So you have to chop the result. And that also means that key is actually doing unnecessary work. It's collecting the information about the appearance of all these things that we're not actually interested in. We're just going to discard at the end. And that makes me not so happy. There's another problem. Very often, you want separately the information about where things appeared or how many there are or something else about them. And you also want the actual unique keys, unique values that can appear. And then you can use that information about them to, for example, select. So here, we want exactly the names that appeared exactly 2 times. And the issue that I have with this is finding the unique values is a relatively expensive operation. And the first thing we do is we find all the unique values, and then we completely forget about that, and then we let key compute the unique values again. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to tell key that we already found out what the unique values were? Just use that. Don't have to double the work. So we could do that, actually. There's a way to do it, because remember, key gives us the information about what those unique values are and the indices. So if we include in the result what they are, then we get, in this case, a matrix, and then we can transpose it and split it, and now we've got a two-element vector where the first element are the keys and the second element are the counts in this case, because that's what we're looking for. And now we can use that to find exactly the information that we want. And then we can inline that, and then again, sort ordering. Let's say we want to sort descending order. We just have to sort everything by those value, and yeah. So let's go back to this not efficient case where we compute the unique values in order to stay sane, because this is easy to read. It's straightforward, but not efficient. And let's capture those unique values that we've already computed. And then let's make a thought experiment. Imagine if key was not a monadic operator. Imagine if it was a dyadic operator, and as right operand, you gave it the vocabulary of possible values. And key would go, oh, you already told me what they are. I don't need to compute them. And then if you wanted them sorted in any particular order, then we could just sort them before we give them to key. But alas, key is not a dyadic operator, and I'm not suggesting that we add another operator just to add that operand. No. It's sad, but it is what it is. We do have one operand, and that's taken by that operand function that does that essential work of, say, counting where the major cells appear. And it is, of course, fully taken. It could be any function. We can't do anything special here, giving a special function. But let's look at what that operand actually does. It's being called over and over again for each unique key that the key operator finds, for each unique value. And then we pass it the values, or that could be an argument to key if you use it dyadically, or just the indices if you use it the derived function monadically. And then as left argument, we give it the actual value in question. Then we could break this out. If key would give us a table of the unique key and the information, where the indices, or data, if you pass it that, then we could use some kind of reduction, not exactly like this, but something like this, and could call the operand function, which is now not an operand anymore, now it's just a standalone function, and we get the same kind of effect. But of course, it's a bit silly for key to return us the information about the unique values when we just told key about the unique values. We already have that. So we can pass that in as a separate argument to that function, and then key could just give us the indices information instead. And very often, you don't actually need to know what the keys are, because you already know what they are, and you know what the ordering is, and you're just making a query. You want to know the exact count, for example. So then things can be even simpler. In fact, often it'll be enough with just the primitive. So let's go back to our sad example and see how it would look if key had this extension. We take the unique, we find out what they are, and we pass that to key, and key gives us the indices information, and we know that it is in the exact order as given in this vocabulary, because we told key to use this vocabulary in this order, and therefore we can just directly query which ones have exactly 2 appearances, and we can use that to filter that same vocabulary that we used. And then, of course, if we want a particular order, then we can arrange that particular order. It could be sort order, it could be any order. In fact, the way I've shown how to do it, that's a bit wasteful. It doesn't really work, because maybe the data you're getting out and what you want to sort by isn't the same thing. So here, we are getting a result out, and then we are sorting it. Maybe we want to sort it by some data that has been lost in the process of getting our final result. But with key taking a vocabulary, we can decide the order in advance, or we can sort by the result if we want to do that. So let's say we want to query, as you said before, meaning we don't want all the values, we want these particular information about these particular values. How would that look? We know what all the values that we're interested in are. We give those to key. Key only returns us information about the values that we are interested in, and it can save work on this. And often, again, we don't actually want the key names, and often we don't actually have high rank array, it's just say a vector, which would make things even simpler. So if we make it into a vector, we can just return the information. Here it's the indices separately and the count separately. And you can see it turns out, I would say, significantly simpler to work with and efficient. So this is really what I'm proposing. There's not much to it. Currently, key takes an operand, a function, which could be monadic or dyadic. It kind of has to be dyadic, but it might ignore the left argument, which is often the case. And we can call it either with just some values, and it will process the indices, or we can call it with keys and some values, and it will group the values by the keys. And what I'm saying is, if we, instead of giving a function there, we give the vocabulary to key, then we can, again, use the same syntax. You might need to add parentheses because of how binding works, but it's the exact same process. And then if you have a function that you want to apply to it, you apply that afterwards. And yes, this involves an each. It's not so good, but there's not much we can do because we can't mix the result since the list of indices might have unequal length between the elements. And we might think that the each is going to do a massive slowdown here. And of course, there will be cases where that might be the case, but in general, the process of finding the unique values and the actual processing that you want to do on it is going to drown out the overhead of the each, at least if you've got any kind of significant data, which is what would be interesting for performance perspective. So this is the idea I've got. I'd like to know what you think about it.